The government remains shut down, and the president's latest proposal to end it is not being received well. The new plan includes extending temporary protections for so-called dreamers, or undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. It would also include more border protection for agents and other immigration officials. In exchange, President Trump still wants the $5.7 billion for a steel barrier along the U.S.-Mexico border. The president's plan was quickly rejected by Democratic lawmakers, with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calling it a, quote, non-starter. Vice President Mike Pence appeared on Sunday's Face the Nation to defend the plan.
It really is an effort to compromise, and we really look forward to the Senate taking this bill up Tuesday and beginning to work in earnest, not just to end this government shutdown, which is a burden on the families of 800,000 federal workers, but even more importantly in that, to address the crisis that we face at our southern border. I think what the American people saw the president do yesterday was say, I want to set the table for us resolving this issue in a way that achieves his objectives to secure the border, end the humanitarian and security crisis, end the government shutdown, but also to bring together the Democrats' priorities to accomplish that. That's what the American people expect us to do.
And back with me now is CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. We're also joined by Associated Press White House reporter Jill Colvin. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Ed, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to start with you. We heard Vice President Mike Pence call the president's proposal a compromise, but it doesn't seem that Democrats feel that it's much of a compromise. What are you hearing?
No, they don't, because they don't believe, well, they said they weren't contacted, they weren't brought into discussions before the president announced this plan on Saturday, and the vice president acknowledged that yesterday, that there were no discussions with Democrats in advance. Also, Republicans, if they've been paying attention, would know that the idea of building permanent structures along the U.S.-Mexico border for temporarily extending the legal status of refugees and dreamers in this country is a non-starter with Democrats. That unless or until the president is offering a permanent fix on those issues to go with his permanent wall, the Democrats aren't going to take him seriously, and that's what we've seen so far.
Jill, it's sort of interesting to me. Does the White House think Vice President Pence is the best person to negotiate an end to the shutdown?
Well, this was a negotiated effort that emerged with a team that was led by Jared Kushner. Mike Pence also played a key role there, meeting with lawmakers on the Hill and convening meetings at the White House. Mick Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff, as well as Secretary Nielsen from the Department of Homeland Security, also played an effort. But this is really being seen as, internally at least, as a Jared Kushner-led effort. Of course, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor. And their thinking here was that if they couldn't negotiate with the leaders of the Democratic Party, with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, then what they might try to do was to do some outreach to some more moderate Democrats, try to figure out some solutions that they might be interested in. But as you've seen, this has just landed with an absolute thud. Clearly, they didn't quite understand what the Democratic Party was interested in here, didn't understand that this kind of deal just didn't do enough. It's unclear, though, however, whether this is just a starting point or whether it is the final offering piece. You know, Democrats have made clear that they would be more interested if the president were to offer a pathway to citizenship for current DACA recipients, making his offer a little bit more generous. But the president's also really in a very boxed-in situation here, because even the proposal that he put forward Saturday was really reacted to very negatively from the right, with people like Ann Coulter comparing it to amnesty.
Sure. I was just going to say that a number of the president's supporters, as you pointed out, came out strongly against it, with Ann Coulter tweeting, "Trump proposes amnesty. We voted for Trump and got Jeb." So apparently this compromise, and I say that, in quotes, wasn't hardline enough for, like you said, his conservative supporters. So how concerned, Jill, is the White House about backlash from Republicans over this proposal? Has the president essentially boxed himself into a situation where he cannot give an inch?
The president's in a very difficult place here politically. If he wants a deal that's going to gain support from Democrats, it's going to need to be more generous than what he proposed on Saturday. And we see how quickly his supporters, people like Coulter, that conservative media landscape, how little room they're willing to give him to negotiate. They believe that the president in his campaign promised to build a wall along the southern border and say that that is what they expect him to do, to go fulfill that promise that he made. That said, we're starting to see, and it's I think a little too soon to say exactly how Trump's broader base is reacting to that. There was a piece in the Washington Post today talking to some Trump voters in 2016 who said that, at this point they're actually getting quite sick and tired of the shutdown, and they feel like they're not supportive of the way that the president has been handling this. And so it'll be interesting to see over the coming weeks, as the impact of this shutdown becomes more salient in regular people's lives, whether they begin, even Trump supporters, to blame him for what's happening.
Yeah, I wonder if in some ways, the sort of conservative talking heads might be diverging a little bit from his base on this issue. But Ed, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate will take up the proposal on Tuesday. But isn't it essentially dead on arrival?
Well, we've actually gotten some updated guidance, Tanya, that they're not firmly committing to that just yet. And it's not to say that it's not going to happen. There may just be questions about how exactly and when exactly. But the plan, at least stated by Republican leadership, is, yes, to take up the president's proposals and see where it goes. The problem is that kind of legislation needs 60 votes to get to a final vote. And with only with less than 60 Republican votes in the Senate, it's going to be difficult. And there's been no movement among any potentially gettable Democrat in the direction of what Republicans are proposing, at least not yet. The only one that has sort of expressed general hope that everyone can kind of get along is Joe Manchin, who is obviously the ripest and easiest target for Republicans because of his moderate views on everything. But even he has not endorsed what the president is doing because I think, A, he knows that it's bad policy in his view, and B, that there's no other Democrat that's willing to go with him should he opt to join the Republicans. So if McConnell really wants to hold that kind of a vote, he can, but at this point, at least, it looks like it would be dead on arrival.
Ed O'Keefe and Jill Colvin, thank you. The impasse continues with no end in sight. Thank you to both of you.